calculating the total surface area of a cylinder requires us to understand what the net of the cylinder would look like. So if I cut that cylinder open and laid it out flat, you hopefully would see that the cylinder is made up of two circles and a rectangle. So the two circles form the end of the cylinder and the rectangle forms the curved surface of the cylinder. So the thing to understand about the cylinder when you open it out flat is that the top part of this rectangle has to fit around the circle. So the length of that part of the rectangle is the same as the circumference of the circle. And we know how to calculate the circumference of a circle. So keeping that idea in mind, we're going to work through the next example, which is calculating the total surface area of a cylinder. So if we imagine what the net of that cylinder looks like, the top is a circle of radius 3. We've got a rectangular part which curves around to make the curved bit of the cylinder. I know the height is 11 millimeters, but I've got no idea yet what this top length of the rectangle is. And there's another circle obviously on the bottom which has also radius 3. So the thing to work out before I start doing anything is this length of the rectangle here. So because I know that that length of the rectangle has to be the same size as the circumference of the top circle or the bottom circle, I know that the circumference of that circle is 2 times pi times r. So in this particular case, the rectangle is 2 times pi times 3 on the top length there. So if I'm working out the total surface area of this rectangle, I know that I've got to add two circles of radius 3 plus a rectangle which is 11 millimeters in height, and in length it's 2 times pi times 3. So once I've got this little plan of attack, I can work through and substitute in all my values I need to do into the relevant formulas and work it out in one hit on the calculator. So the total surface area of that cylinder is going to be 2 times the area of that circle. So it's pi times 3 squared plus 2 times pi times 3 is the length times the width is 11. So I've got one calculation to put into my calculator, and my answer then will be the full surface area of that whole cylinder. So if I put it in one hit into the calculator, 2 times the area of the circle is 2 times pi times the radius squared, which was 3 squared, plus the area of that rectangular part was 2 times pi times 3. So that was the circumference of the circle for the top edge of the rectangle, times 11 is the width of the rectangle. So now if I'm looking at what I've put into the calculator, 2 lots of the circle plus 2 times pi times 3, 2 pi r times 11. So my answer correct to 2 decimal places will be 263.89. And my units in this case are millimetres, and because it's an area measurement, it's millimetres squared. So if I move now onto a harder looking example, this one's a half a cylinder. So the shapes are slightly different to what we're going to end up with in this case. So if I'm thinking what would this look like as a net, hopefully you can see I've got two ends there, where if I added those two ends together, I've got a full circle. So if I'm thinking to myself, what do my bits and pieces look like? I've got a circle of radius 2 because the diameter is 4. And then I've got a rectangle on the bottom, which is 4 centimetres by 8 centimetres. Then I've got another rectangle, which is this curved piece. So really I've got a rectangle, if you're imagining this is the curved bit of the circle. I know this is 8 centimetres here, but this length on my rectangle is the length of half of the circumference of the circle. So if you're thinking 2 times pi times the radius of the circle is 2, that would be the circumference of the whole circle. Because I've only got half a circle, that length is divided by 2. So it's a much more complicated story this time. So the total surface area this time is a circle of radius 2. So pi times 2 squared plus my rectangle of 8 times 4, length times width, plus I've got another rectangle, and this time one of my lengths is 2 times pi times 2 divided by 2, and my other length is 8. So I've got circle plus rectangle on the bottom plus rectangular part of that curved section of the cylinder. So I would need then to put that whole thing into the calculator in one go again. So if I'm going onto my calculator, I need to go pi times 2 squared plus 8 times 4 which is the bottom section of that shape, and then on the curved section, that rectangular bit that it's sort of bent and made into a curve, I've got 2 times pi times 2 divided by 2, so I'm going to use a fraction template there. 2 times pi times 2 divided by 2. I don't try to do any simplification if I'm using the calculator. And the length of that rectangle is 8. So again, circle, which is the 2 half circle end bits added together, plus rectangle for the base, plus rectangle for the curved section of that shape. So corrected 2 decimal places, that one would be 94.83. And our units this time are centimetres squared.